the corporate party, when her lover claimed my wife for the night, I reached for my service Glock, promising to end his manhood right there. Be me, Richard Walker, 28 years old. Living in San Antonio, working as a corporate crisis consultant for major companies, making serious bank and living the dream. Been married to Elizabeth for 12 years, currently at some fancy restaurant called the Golden Pearl, sitting at the edge of the private dining area, watching other guests enjoying their evening. Some are taking walks, others making calls, waiters bringing fancy cocktails and artisanal coffee. Party's in full swing, but I'm distracted by this weird note. Some server just dropped it off. Says my wife might be in danger. Warning about some guy named Andrew Collins, local football star trying to charm my wife. Note hits me like a truck. Look up and see Elizabeth dancing with Collins again. Getting worried when they disappear for the second time. Try to get up and intervene. But before I can move, music stops. See them coming back from the dance floor. Feel slightly relieved. But then they don't come to our table. Instead, they go to Andrew's group. Watch them chatting with his friends. Then Andrew leaves. Elizabeth comes over. Tells me she loves me. Says she's heading to the bathroom. Something feels off about how she said it. The way she paused. How she declared her love. Like she's planning something else. Stand up to follow her. Only take a few steps. When suddenly Collins and his crew, just like the note warned, block my path. Richard Walker isn't your average consultant. Every week flying to different countries. Fixing companies that are falling apart. Administration problems. Operational disasters. Financial messes. Deal with egotistical executives daily. The kind who climbed ranks through dirty schemes. Bribes, lies, manipulation. Seen it all. Face stubborn managers who terrorize their employees. They brag about being ruthless. When I step in to make changes, always get resistance. Bullying, even death threats. Once got threatened by a drug cartel. Was moving a manufacturing plant from Columbia to Tennessee. Didn't back down. Company moved anyway. I'm good at what I do, especially when dealing with selfish power players. It's basically my specialty. So when Andrew Collins and his inexperienced crew try to intimidate me, MFW, I turn the tables instantly. Make them feel small. Nobody ever told them the consequences of their actions so directly. Watch them squirm. They quickly step aside, with Collins' friends out of the way. Rush after Elizabeth. Catch up just as she's reaching the back exit. Elizabeth! I call out. She either doesn't hear or ignores me, keeps walking towards the exit. Pick up my pace. Close the gap between us. Elizabeth, where are you going? This time she stops, turns around, looks annoyed and confused about why I'm here. Looking at her now. Can tell something's off. She's distant, clearly upset that I followed her. I could ask you the same thing. What are you doing here? She asks. Where are you headed, Elizabeth? She thinks for a moment. Starts to say, I want, but stops. Look her straight in the eyes. Where are you going, Elizabeth? She looks away, thinking to herself, this isn't how it was supposed to go. I shouldn't be here. Tries to speak again. Stops herself. Needs to think about what to tell me. Knows she can't make up a story now. Has to tell the truth. Has to tell me where she's really going. Even though it's going to be uncomfortable. Even though it's going to hurt me. Earlier that evening, something happened. Elizabeth ran into Andrew Collins near Henderson's. She was coming out of the bathroom. Walking past his table, he spotted her immediately. Got up from his seat. Politely stopped her. Introduced himself. Started a brief conversation. After that, she went back to our table. Rejoined me and others at the gathering. Party was hitting its peak. Band finally showed up. Started their first song of the night. That's when Andrew Collins approached our table. Everyone got excited. Local sports star coming to say hi. He was friendly. Introduced himself to everyone. Shook hands all around. Took some selfies. Signed some autographs. Then asked Elizabeth to dance. She was flustered. Said no at first, but he kept asking politely. Everyone at the table encouraged her. I didn't object, so she reluctantly agreed. Elizabeth was nervous when Andrew led her away, taking her to the dance floor. But dancing with him wasn't what she expected. He was young, attractive, confident, professional athlete, and really knew how to dance. The way he touched her resonated, held her exactly how she liked, talked to her in ways she enjoyed, said things she wanted to hear, completely charmed her. After that first dance, she kept accepting his invitations. As the night went on, more and more dances, getting more familiar, her attraction to him growing stronger, becoming physically aware of him. By the end of the night, he led her away from the dance floor to a quiet spot, held her close, kissed her, caressed her, told her how he felt, suggested they go to his place, offered privacy, relaxation, a chance to really get to know each other, described in detail how they'd spend the night, promised physical connection, said it would be unforgettable, something she'd always remember. Elizabeth was entranced, sitting with me and other guests, thinking about his offer, torn about leaving her husband, going home with someone she barely knew. But the thought of being with Andrew excited her. Knew this was different from past attractions. She'd found other men appealing before, but it never went beyond that. Tonight was different. She wanted his affection, yearned to give in to the moment, but struggled with guilt about betraying my trust, breaking our promises, looking for a way to justify her decision, something she could accept morally, something she hoped I would understand. Decided to go with Andrew because he wasn't just any athlete or local celebrity. He had an aura, a sense of honor that fascinated her. Andrew was like a romantic dream come true, offering her something irresistible. Elizabeth believed I would understand, thought I'd see it as a special adventure, expected me to support her connection with Andrew. Just this one time, figured I might be disappointed, but would understand, because I wasn't just her husband. I was her best friend and partner, would want her to take this once-in-a-lifetime chance. These thoughts comforted her, gave her justification she could accept, something she hoped could convince me too. Deep down, though, she knew the real reason. It was Andrew's bold claim that she was his for the night, created a primal desire she couldn't ignore. Decided not to miss this thrilling opportunity. Reminded herself she wasn't just my wife. She was a woman with her own needs and desires. With her mind made up, as the birthday dinner was ending, everyone moving back to the venue, Andrew approached our table again, asked Elizabeth for another dance. I was clearly annoyed, resisted his constant requests. Elizabeth smoothly handled my objections, said she'd take one last dance, mentioned how much she liked the song. Andrew thanked me for my patience, led her to the darker corners of the dance floor, asked if she was ready to leave. She laughed and agreed, admitted she was giving in to him completely. When the dance ended, he brought her back to discuss their exit plan, assured her about her safety, promised to handle any issues with me, trusting his words. Elizabeth positioned herself at the back exit, ready to leave with him, but their plan fell apart when I unexpectedly showed up, blocking her exit, showing the flaw in Andrew's scheme. Elizabeth, I'm waiting. Tell me where you're going, I demanded. Elizabeth gathered her courage. Richard, I'm going with Andrew. You're going with Andrew? I asked emotionlessly. Yes, I'm joining Andrew. He invited me to his place, she stated. I stayed calm. Asked why she was going to his house. Richard, this is too complicated to explain right now. I'll call or text you later to clarify. But for now, I have to go. Andrew is waiting, she explained. I maintained my composure, refused to let her pass, rejected the idea of a later explanation, insisted on understanding her intentions now. Oh God, Richard, please. Let's not make a scene over this. Just let me go. I'll explain everything later, Elizabeth pleaded. No, Elizabeth. I need you to explain what's happening right now, I insisted. Raised my voice. Faced with my insistence, Elizabeth became defensive. Richard, you don't control me. Move aside and let me go. No, Elizabeth. You're my wife. You're not leaving until you explain your actions, I countered. Realizing how determined I was, Elizabeth knew she had to tell the truth. With a nervous sigh, she began. Richard, I know how terrible this sounds, and I honestly can't believe I'm doing this. But I'm going to Andrew's to spend the night, quickly added. But Richard, it's only for tonight, and he'll bring me back tomorrow. I didn't respond immediately. Took a few moments to process. My wife just told me she planned to spend the night with Collins. Finally gathered my thoughts. Replied angrily. No, Elizabeth, you will not spend a night with Collins. You're not going to some sleepover, are you? You're planning to be intimate with him, aren't you? Elizabeth avoided my gaze, stayed silent. Tell me the truth, Elizabeth. Is that your plan? She remained silent, eyes fixed on the ground. Elizabeth, I know I'm correct, I stated. She finally replied. Yes, Richard, you're correct. I'm planning to be intimate with Andrew. Silence filled the hallway. Eventually, Elizabeth looked up, saw the confused expression on my face. Richard, what are you thinking about? Richard Walker wasn't easily surprised or easily shocked, but what his wife revealed deeply disturbed him, even after reading the warning note. For a brief moment, lost my composure. What am I thinking? I'll tell you what I'm thinking, Elizabeth. I think this is utterly astonishing. Just insane, that's what I'm thinking. Elizabeth was startled by my rare outburst. Never seen such anger from me before. It frightened her. Oh God, Richard. I'm sorry, Elizabeth said. Still couldn't meet my gaze. Why, Elizabeth? Why are you doing this? I demanded. Richard, I know this might seem mad, but please just listen, she implored. I'm listening, I replied. Richard, probably every woman fantasizes about a romantic encounter with a celebrity or someone wealthy and famous. Cut her off sarcastically. Let me guess, Andrew Collins is your fairy tale prince? Or your knight in shining armor? Please, Richard, don't mock this. This is every woman's fantasy. Andrew isn't just anyone. He's exceptional. He's a true gentleman, a star and a celebrity. I want to live the dream every woman fantasizes about. So please, Richard, show me that you love me by allowing me this experience. She pleaded with me. I struggled to manage my emotions in this unbelievable situation. So tonight you'll go to Collins, be intimate with him, and tomorrow he'll return you home. Then we'll continue as a happily married couple, as if this encounter never happened. Is that what you're saying, Elizabeth? It's not an affair. It's just one night. Yes, tomorrow I'll come back, and my dream will have come true. I will be happy, and you will be happy, because you supported me in this, and we'll move on, she responded, hoping I believed her. But seeing my reaction, Elizabeth realized things weren't going as planned. So you're discarding me? To be intimate with your charming prince, who you see as far superior to me, I stated. Damn, Elizabeth, that really hurts. Are you implying I'm not special? Not a real man? No, Richard, you are special. You're a real man, she exclaimed in distress. Well, Elizabeth, then what did you mean? I queried. I'm not a professional athlete or a celebrity who supposedly knows the secret to pleasing a woman sexually. Is that it? Elizabeth looked down. There's more to it, she mentioned. Then what's the issue? Are you bored with me? No, Richard. You're the greatest, she insisted. But again, I interrupted. I'm the best, yet you still need someone else, I stated. Yes, she admitted, her gaze still averted. So tonight, you acknowledge that the person you desire is Andrew Collins, I said. She conceded, still avoiding my look. So you've decided to spend the night with Andrew Collins, engaging in a night full of passion, I concluded. It's not about love. I don't have feelings of love for him. But yes, I've decided to share an intimate moment with him and experience something a lot of women dream of, she stated firmly. With assurance, however, she quickly followed up. Richard, I'm not abandoning our relationship. You're my spouse, and I'll never walk away from what we have. But tonight I won't be by your side. I'll be with Andrew. I hope, no, I implore you to try to grasp my desires and requirements. Please, Richard, I beg of you, let's not create a dramatic ordeal. I inhaled deeply. Why, Elizabeth? Why do you believe I should be okay with you sleeping with another guy and then returning to me as if it's nothing? It's because you've always approached me with an open heart, and you've consistently respected my emotions, desires, and necessities with care and attention. And I trust that when you see how meaningful this night with Andrew is to me, you'll manage your frustration and approach it as a calm, seasoned, cultured individual. She explained to her husband, Can I deal with it? Can I actually cope? Please make it clear to me how I'm supposed to come to terms with the fact that tonight you'll be in Andrew Collins' bed and he'll take you. How am I to face tomorrow when he drives up with you and I learn that you two shared not just a moment but the entire night together? How can I look at you knowing you've shared yourself with someone else? Explain to me, how should I process all this? Richard, I don't have an answer for you. I just hope you can figure this out in your head and we can continue with our lives. I'm aware you're upset with me, but can't you see how crucial this experience is for me? She questioned. Elizabeth, what you're suggesting is you wish I'd simply swallow my pride and tolerate your escapade with Collins, I remarked. This isn't a fling, she yelled. And no, Richard, I don't expect you to just be okay with it. I'm asking you to acknowledge my emotions and necessities and to reconcile with them because of your love for me and because you're my closest companion, my kindred spirit, and you wish for me to have this unique encounter, an experience I might never have again. Richard, this is my plea to you, dear, she expressed. I mulled over Elizabeth's appeal momentarily, struggled to understand how she could expect me to accept her intimacy with Collins. The longer I pondered, the clearer it became. She failed to understand the seriousness of her actions and their effect on me and our bond. It appeared she was lost in a fantasy, inspired by her interaction with Collins that evening. Felt compelled to snap her back to reality. Elizabeth, what do they call a guy whose wife has relations with another man? I probed. After thinking it over for a bit, Elizabeth struggled with the term. Exactly, Elizabeth. They refer to him as a cuckold, a man whose wife is involved with another man for pleasure. But I refuse to be made a cuckold by you and Andrew Collins, I declared decisively. Tears formed in Elizabeth's eyes as she faced me. So you're not going to stop me? She asked. No, Elizabeth. I won't interfere. You're grown and capable of your own choices. Whether you decide to go through with this or not is in your hands. If you believe this is what you need, then proceed. Spend the night with him. Indulge in what you call love and intimacy. I won't block your path, I interjected. I've already clarified this isn't about love. I don't love him. I love you, Richard. It's merely a physical attraction. I'm attracted to Andrew physically, not emotionally, Elizabeth contended. So you're distinguishing between love and physicality. In your thoughts, I deduced? Yes, Richard. I'm spending time with Andrew due to physical attraction, but I'll return to you because of our love. You're my spouse, My closest ally, my soulmate. What we have goes beyond mere physical connection, she reassured. I won't argue over the difference between love and physical attraction with you. But as I stated, I won't obstruct your path, I repeated. Elizabeth stared at me, pondering if I genuinely comprehended. Elizabeth, if this is truly your wish, pursue it. But I paused. We're ending our marriage right now. Elizabeth panicked. End our marriage? What do you mean? I mean that once you exit, our matrimonial bond ceases. We'll detach our rings and annul our union. The formal procedures will be addressed afterward. Yet in my view, our marriage terminates prior to your departure, I explained. Before Elizabeth had the chance to retort, I proceeded. And this evening, when Collins escorts you, I'll stand aside, because you'll no longer be my wife. No. I cannot undertake this, Richard. I simply cannot, Elizabeth yelled. We've concurred on this, Elizabeth. So what is your verdict? I pressed. I'm uncertain, she uttered tiredly. Ridiculous. You're fully aware of your desires. You wish to spend the evening with Andrew Collins, and then return to me, I alleged. Elizabeth wept bitterly. Are you serious? If I spend just one night with Andrew, will you end our marriage? She inquired, her voice quivering. Absolutely, I confirmed with utmost seriousness. Elizabeth swiftly transitioned from panic to fury as she realized her justification for spending the night with Andrew disintegrated right before her. Richard, do my sentiments and feelings genuinely hold such low value to you that you would instantly terminate our marriage over this, without affording us an opportunity to resolve and proceed together? She questioned. Elizabeth, there's nothing to rectify here. The knowledge that certain matters in life are immutable, and my spouse being intimate with another man is among them. I won't consent to an arrangement where you're intimate with Collins, and afterward we continue our lives. As though it's trivial, I stated. So my feelings, emotions, and necessities are meaningless to you? She remarked sarcastically. Elizabeth, merely moments ago, you departed and left me, effectively discarding me without any clarification. Had I not pursued and halted you, you'd currently be en route to Andrew Collins' residence for an intimate night. Thus, evidently, my sentiments and emotions are inconsequential to you. Why then should your feelings and emotions hold any significance to me? I questioned. The gravity of her choice struck Elizabeth. Oh my goodness, Richard. I'm profoundly remorseful. It never crossed my mind, she expressed. Damn it, Elizabeth. Don't claim you didn't contemplate. Because you did. All I could think about was you, getting ready for Collins, and the sensuous activities he had planned for you, I began. You certainly didn't consider my perspective. Why you left, your destination, and your actions, I articulated. Oh God, Richard, please trust me. I had no intention of departing without informing you of my whereabouts. Upon arriving at Andrews, I intended to message you, elucidating my location and actions, she explained. Message me, really? I laughed. So you're saying while you're in bed with Collins, your intention was to message me? Richard, I regret leaving the gathering, but I chose to visit Andrew Collins for some private moments, so I won't be returning home tonight. Good night and see you tomorrow. Is that it? I ridiculed. This is heartless, she remarked. Heartless, Elizabeth? It's heartless and astonishing that you made a momentary choice to abandon me, your husband, your closest companion, and your soulmate, to spend a night with a man you've recently met, I replied. Elizabeth sobbed. What's truly heartless is your expectation for me to tolerate it as if it's insignificant. That's heartless, she protested. I'm so sorry, Richard. Sorry, I just didn't think, she stated. Well, Elizabeth, it's irrelevant now, what you pondered or didn't, and what you communicated or failed to, because I intercepted you before you could leave. And now I comprehend your intentions, and you understand mine. We no longer need to guess. Now we must confront the reality, I said with resolution. Elizabeth gazed at me with a questioning look. And what's the key? She inquired. The essence is this. It's the exit. And Collins awaits you outside. I presume he's growing impatient. The choice is yours, I decisively informed. My spouse of 12 years. Without a moment's hesitation, Elizabeth declared. Richard, I won't walk through that door. I refuse to abandon you for him. I won't forsake our shared life for his benefit. I'm not that naive, Elizabeth explained. I observed her intently. Just a quarter of an hour ago, you seemed ready to leave through that door and accompany him. So what's different now? Or is everything essentially the same? Aside from the fact that you're hesitant to pursue a divorce, I inquired.
Well, I mean,
is it possible to assume that your urgent craving to be intimate with Collins has just vanished? Or are you planning to wait until next week when I'm in Europe to be with him? I questioned. No, why would you think that? Elizabeth exclaimed, raising her voice. Are you planning on being unfaithful to me when I'm not around? I pressed. No. I have never been unfaithful to you. I would never betray you. I adore you, she declared loudly. But earlier tonight, you were on the verge of being unfaithful. If I hadn't intervened, you would be betraying me at this moment. For the second time, I recounted. The truth struck Elizabeth forcefully. She was suddenly confronted with the reality of her actions towards Andrew. Oh my goodness, no, no, no. What was going through my mind? She yelled. So what occurred? I inquired. I'm not certain, Richard. I'm completely bewildered. I can't grasp how I thought it was okay to go with Andrew, believing it wouldn't be wrong or upset you, she admitted. I listened, yet my doubtful look didn't escape her. She realized she needed to be utterly transparent. Richard, I honestly don't know what got into me. It all started when Andrew came up to our table, asking me to dance, and led me to the dance floor. He was so bold and insistent, constantly expressing his desire for me, and how enjoyable it would be to be together in a romantic sense. Then he held me close, kissed me, and started to caress me. And Richard, I didn't resist. I didn't push him away, she confessed, with tears running down her cheeks. So you motivated him, I pointed out. Yes, I motivated him. I'm deeply sorry, Richard, she sobbed. Then I persuaded myself that leaving with him was the correct choice, and that you would comprehend and not mind if I went with him. All I can articulate is that I recognize I've made a huge mistake, and I'm terribly sorry, she wept. I heard Elizabeth break down and simultaneously pondered over the note the waiter had handed me. I reached into my pocket and presented it. Here, read this, I suggested. Elizabeth read the note, then gazed at me. Where did this come from, she inquired. The waiter handed it to me during our meal, I replied. Is this merely a trick he employs? Elizabeth wondered. That's what's written here, I explained. Elizabeth was astonished after reading the note. I can't fathom it, she remarked. He singled you out from the crowd and enticed you. He deceived you, I explained. Elizabeth repeatedly reviewed the note. Was what he did to me all just for amusement? She questioned. Yes, everything he told you was just for fun, I confirmed. Elizabeth felt devastated. She realized she was merely the target for this week's scheme, a prize to fulfill Colin's lust. For married women, last week it might have been a woman named Caroline. The following could be Patricia. But this week it's me. Elizabeth acknowledged her error in the distressing realization that she jeopardized her marriage. Richard, I feel nauseous, she uttered, turned and hurried to the restroom. After throwing up multiple times, she washed her hands and face, seeing her reflection in the mirror, looking completely worn out, mirroring the chaos of the evening. Exiting the restroom, Elizabeth saw me waiting by the exit. She approached quickly and embraced me. Oh, Richard, I'm profoundly sorry. Please forgive my foolishness and naivety, she pleaded. Amid sobs, I gazed at her, then uttered, Elizabeth, love caught you unawares. Then he charmed you. To the degree that you believed, engaging in intimacy with him would lead to no repercussions, that I would be indifferent. If you engaged in a fleeting encounter with him, but now you've discovered the contrary, you now understand, so promise us we'll never find ourselves in this predicament again. Heading towards the exit, I noticed two of Colin's comrades were still present. Elizabeth, here. I need to converse with Colin's acquaintances, I declared. Please let it be. We don't require any further complications, Elizabeth urged. No, Elizabeth, I can't simply abandon this in this manner. And with those words, I departed, leaving Elizabeth by herself. Approaching Colin's companions, I said, Gentlemen, we seek no trouble. One of his comrades expressed, All right then, follow my directive. Inform your friend Collins that he was defeated today, that he's a failure. Inform him that Richard Walker will broadcast globally, that Andrew Collins is a failure, I commanded. Both of Collins' comrades gazed at me, dumbfounded. Sir, we cannot convey this to him. He'd annihilate us both, one remarked. Do you prefer to confront me or him, I inquired. Sir, we wish for no quarrel with you, one replied. Wise decision. Now one of you use the phone and relay my message. Do it now, and mention that upon my departure, it'd be prudent for him not to appear anywhere, I instructed. One of the men grabbed the phone, dialed Collins' number, and relayed my message. I didn't catch the dialogue, but sensed that Collins was seething with rage, because his friend advised him against any rash actions, and then the conversation ceased. What was his response? I queried. He said he would end you, one of the men responded. Okay, I acknowledged. Oh, Richard, I vow to you, after everything, I'll never allow another man near me, she asserted. I stared at her briefly, then responded. Okay, and when we socialize as we did tonight, I'll endeavor to assist you. In maintaining that vow, I should have intervened before Collins ensnared you, but I failed. Thus this fault lies with both of us, and also with Collins, for he ought not to have pursued a married woman. So Elizabeth, I absolve you and myself, but not Collins. and I'll confront him eventually. Oh, Richard, I'm grateful for your empathy. But please let's disregard Andrew. We'll never cross paths with him again. And he's not worth the potential difficulty, she stated. Following her comment, I pondered why she didn't wish for Andrew to endure any repercussions. After all, Collins nearly cost Elizabeth her marriage. Why wouldn't she desire him to experience some distress for ensnaring her in his scheme? I'll contemplate, I assured her. I then inquired, do you wish to return to the festivity? No, Richard. Let's head home, Elizabeth exclaimed. Absolutely yes, let's just return home. Richard and Elizabeth proceeded back through the corridor, re-entered the restaurant, and with that, I, my two companions, picked up Elizabeth, and we departed the establishment and the bar. On the street, I handed the parking stub to the valet, and then we, along with several other diners, awaited our automobile. During our wait, an SUV accelerated towards us, halting abruptly in front of us, and the passenger window descended. An irate Andrew Collins was inside the SUV. Come on, Elizabeth. You mentioned your desire to accompany me. So come on, enter the vehicle, Andrew yelled. She will not accompany you, Collins, I retorted. I'm not conversing with you, elderly man, Andrew yelled back at me. Come on, Elizabeth, let's depart now, Andrew persisted. No, Andrew, I can't accompany you this evening, Elizabeth replied. Elizabeth, come here and enter the car. Let's depart now, Andrew yelled. She won't accompany you. You were defeated in the game. You're a loser. Now leave this place, loser. And let us be, I informed Andrew. Being labeled a loser in the presence of a crowd who were probably his supporters immediately angered Andrew. I'll prove who the real loser is, Andrew yelled. Exiting his SUV, I advised the crowd awaiting their vehicles to distance themselves. As the situation might escalate, I then proceeded to the SUV's driver's side front, where I encountered Collins, wielding a sizable semi-automatic pistol. Consumed by fury from losing Elizabeth and facing public disgrace, Collins was uncontrollable. I analyzed Collins' actions, bringing back memory of a spectacle in the Okavango Delta, Botswana, where I observed a battle between a lion and hyenas over the lion's catch. Similarly, Collins had pursued Elizabeth for hours and then claimed her, intending to take her home for his gratification. However, before he could enact his plan, I intervened and rescued her. Now, like that lion, Collins was fixated on reclaiming her, indifferent to the measures required to accomplish his goal, even if it meant eliminating me. Elizabeth will join me, and if you attempt to halt it, I will eliminate you, Collins declared. I retreated slightly, now standing roughly 3 meters from Andrew, with my hands uplifted, palms forward, fingers stretched, in a defensive yet non-threatening stance. Lower the firearm, I requested. You've disrupted my pursuit, and I'll end you. Put down the weapon before it escalates, I suggested. In a composed, assertive tone, I'll display who's in trouble. I'll end you, and then pursue your spouse, Andrew threatened. Aiming the pistol at me, so absorbed in his hate and anger, Collins failed to notice my subtle movement of my right hand into my trouser pocket, where I carried a Sig Sauer P365 micro-compact, semi-automatic pistol, loaded with 8 rounds of .40 critical defense ammunition, 1 in the chamber and 7 in the magazine. I, with a license for the pistol, was well practiced in its defensive use, having not engaged in actual combat for years, but with military experience involving direct engagements. I was prepared for this perilous confrontation with an armed and hostile Andrew Collins. The resurgence of those memories instilled in me the necessary reaction for this life-threatening predicament. Therefore, with my hand in my pocket, I resolved to conclude this encounter by deciding to fire at Collins. The immediate danger posed by Collins' armed threat and proximity justified my lethal response. Having decided, I calmed during Collins' outburst and agitation. I quietened, regulated my breathing, and concentrated on my action plan. Effortlessly, I drew the pistol, positioned it to shoot, aimed at Collins, and rapidly prepared to discharge 2 precise rounds. The pistol's manipulation needed to be accurate, and the action completed within seconds to prevent Collins' potential return fire, a scenario I wished to avoid. As I focused on Collins and drew my weapon smoothly, suddenly 3 fast shots were heard from behind me to my right. At the same moment, I noticed Collins' frame shudder as the bullet struck him, and then I observed Collins topple to the ground, having recoiled from the unexpected gunfire. I wondered aloud, what the heck? And turning, noticed the assailant, still pointing their handgun at Andrew's prone figure. I swiftly regained my composure and confronted the assailant. I believe you've done it. You can lower your weapon, I stated. He was going to eliminate you, the assailant replied. Lowering the firearm, yes, that's what he mentioned, I responded, then inquired, who are you? I'm an off-duty officer, and I'm in charge of security here, the assailant explained, as they hastened towards Collins. Oh, excellent, I'm relieved you're here, I expressed. Yes, I'm thankful I'm here too, she responded. I and the security guard crouched beside Collins, who was alive and alert, but moaning in agony from 3 bullet injuries. What occurred? Andrew groaned. You were fired upon. Remain calm, I instructed. Was I shot? Andrew inquired. Indeed, you were shot, I confirmed. Who fired at me? Andrew questioned. I fired at you, Andrew, the officer confessed. Andrew stared at the officer. Jennifer? He gasped. Yes, Andrew, she replied. Oh my gosh, Jennifer. Why did you fire at me? Collins questioned. Breathless. Because you were about to murder this gentleman, Jennifer explained. Andrew was panting heavily and bleeding profusely. Oh God, it hurts so much. Please aid me. I've summoned the ambulance. They're en route. Stay put and hang on, Jennifer instructed. Collins was gasping for breath. I didn't intend to murder him. It was merely a jest, Andrew stated. Struggling for breath, pointing a firearm and menacing someone is no jest, Jennifer retorted. Jenny, you're aware it was a jest, he said, in a faint voice. Andrew, how often must I tell you that your jests might result in your demise, she replied. I understand, but it was only a jest. I was merely jesting, he wheezed. Oh God, I'm so chilly. Why am I so cold? Then he looked at me and pleaded, Please, sir, I'm extremely parched. Could you fetch me some water? I turned and called to a bystander to procure water for Collins. Collins was losing blood rapidly, and I realized that even if the paramedics arrived immediately, nothing could be done to save him because he had bled out excessively. For a brief period, Collins continued to plead for assistance, but then grew silent, weakened from blood loss. After a few more moments, his breathing ceased. I checked for heartbeat, checked again, but found none. He had departed. Andrew Collins had passed away. It was past 11:30 p.m. when the authorities permitted Elizabeth and me to exit the restaurant and bar. We, along with other eyewitnesses of the altercation and shooting, were interviewed by law enforcement, detectives, special agents, internal affairs, and even an assistant prosecutor. Elizabeth and I recounted our interactions and involvement in Andrew Collins' affairs, and I issued a separate endorsement of the off-duty officer's action to shoot Collins, publicly stating she preserved my life. But after a night that began with attending a birthday celebration and concluded with our entanglement in the homicide of a local sports celebrity, Elizabeth and I were heading home. We traveled in silence for a stretch, neither uttering a single word, until Elizabeth disrupted the quiet. Richard, she began. Yes, I replied. Are you regretful that you didn't end him? She probed. Without hesitating. Yes, I admitted. Elizabeth pondered my instantaneous and unequivocal response and detected the resentment in my tone. I was deprived of contentment and was irate that the scenario with Collins concluded with a female security officer committing the act. When Andrew confronted us outside the restaurant, Elizabeth was certain this now constituted Richard Walker's challenge, and she anticipated that it wouldn't bode well for Andrew Collins. Andrew was a youthful luminary with an enormous ego, a volatile temperament, and a weapon. In contrast, Richard Walker was an experienced corporate tactician, accustomed to undermining influential figures, infuriated that this adult, indulging in childish antics, dared to attempt to usurp his wife directly before him. Andrew Collins could not evade the repercussions. Elizabeth was fully aware that I was carrying a weapon and understood I had intentionally enticed Andrew into a scenario where I would likely end his life, informing Andrew that he had been defeated in their game and labeling him a failure served purely as lure. And inevitably, Andrew took the bait, which doomed him. Thus, Elizabeth was certain Andrew Collins was doomed before he even exited his SUV. Observing the clash between the man she might have loved and her spouse, she was deeply troubled because she believed herself to be the cause of Andrew's demise. Had he not chosen her, and had she not consented to accompany him, he would be alive. Yet by some odd twist of fate, an off-duty police officer fatally shot Collins, mistakenly believing she was protecting my life. This action inadvertently prevented me from having Collins confront the consequences of attempting to elope with my wife. Yet it also spared Elizabeth the anguish of knowing her husband was the killer. Well, I'm relieved you didn't kill him, she confessed to me. Why? I inquired. Because it's preferable that the officer did, she explained. Do you mean by the police? I pressed. Yes, and by the news outlets, she added. If I had done it, both the police and the press would have sought to sensationalize it. However, it would have been a straightforward case of self-defense. He acted aggressively, brandished a firearm, and threatened my life multiple times, standing merely 3 meters away. Hence, it would have been a defensible act of self-protection to use lethal force. Regardless of the police and press opinions, I articulated. Yes, but the press would probe and scrutinize. Why you chose to kill rather than injure him, she responded. Indeed, it's their role to inquire, speculate, and offer critiques. Yet the reality remains that he was equipped with a lethal weapon, posing a fatal threat. Even if injured, for my safety, self-defense would leave me no alternative but to aim for a decisive strike, I countered. Oh, she uttered, pondering my words. It will still be distressing in the media. Even if I hadn't been the one to kill him, some fault will be assigned to me, I shared. And they'll blame me, she acknowledged. Correct, they will. So brace yourself for the scrutiny. We'll face our attorney will provide assistance, to a degree, but only so much. Rest assured the media will spin the narrative to suggest his death was directly tied to you and me. We might face legal actions and disputes, but don't fret. We are equipped to manage them and will prevail. After all, he lured you, assaulted us, and threatened me, making us the victims, I elucidated. Then I reminded her, but bear in mind, he was a celebrated football player and a local hero here in our cherished South. Such figures are revered, so in the eyes of the media, he can do no wrong. Understand that for a while, all we will encounter in the press is the tragic tale of poor Andrew Collins, portrayed as a victim of a jealous spouse, leading to his death by a security officer. However, eventually the true narrative of Andrew Collins will emerge, and the media's frenzy will subside, losing interest in the saga of a sports icon known for seducing married women for nocturnal escapades. All of this to simply vanish, she declared. In time it will, I assured her. They continued their drive in silence for a few moments until I approached a provocative question about her potential regrets over missing a night of passionate intimacy with him. Elizabeth, taken aback and offended by my inquiry, shot me a glance, incredulous at my audacity. After a brief pause, contemplating how to respond, she firmly expressed, "No, dear, absolutely not." This was the deception I expected to hear. A simple no would have sufficed and seemed genuine. However, the extended silence and the look in her eyes, combined with "of course not," overly solemn, confirmed my suspicions. I realized she was reflecting on the loss of her fantastical experience and aimed to shield her disappointment from me. However, her gaze, tone, and word choice betrayed her. Yet I was not taken aback, for I understood that the interaction had rekindled and shattered the notion that she was merely a spouse, that she was a person with the freedom to seek pleasure with someone other than her husband. While they danced, during their dance, Collins engaged Elizabeth in discussions about desires that are often left unspoken. Even between spouses, Elizabeth listened, and his words ignited her curiosity. Collins persuaded her that the ideal way to explore these taboo desires was with a companion with whom she could be completely open, candid, and unrestrained. A partner devoid of emotional bonds, someone experienced and confident, guiding her in discovering the sensual aspects of her nature. Thus, the groundwork for betrayal was laid, and I was aware of it. I recognized she was now receptive to intimacy with other men, despite her early vow to refrain from such encounters. This was merely a tactic to escape her current predicament. When I prevented her from departing with Collins, I noticed the change in her tone and saw it in her behavior. Her actions expressed a willingness to seek closeness with another, though she was not ready to act on these impulses just yet. But that was only for the time being. Aware of all these details, I acknowledged I could never trust her again. As we drove home, I pondered whether I could tolerate my distrust towards her and accept the likelihood that she might someday seize the chance to be with another man. Elizabeth would probably embrace this chance,